So if you are using j2ee, j2ee is just a version of Java that is meant for enterprise development. It's just several other libraries that are useful for interacting with quite a few enterprise technologies such as security or multi-threading or networking, databases and whatnot. I'm just gonna go through some best practices on how to perhaps break up some of the code that you might be working on. So I'll create here a project. So typically you'll be creating some data model for whatever it is that you're building. I'm just going to take a simple example. Perhaps let's see what domain. Music. Let's just play around with music. So you would create some data model. Typically, you'll have a dedicated package where you would be putting all your various data models. Here, let's put it under package model. And you might have maybe the data model might be said that you have several playlists for different users, and each playlist might have multiple songs. So let's start off with songs. And you might have several fields that might represent that song. You might have the name of that song. If you are storing it in a database, you might also have an ID. If you're not, you might not need an ID. Maybe lyrics. Okay. Typically, you'll also have setters and getters for each one of these, and these will be implemented as private variables. And you can quickly generate setters and getters for these. Typically, you don't want to make these public, and you'll have setters and getters that allow you to manipulate them from outside, and also the constructors that go along with that. Typically, you have an all-argument constructor that allows you to instantiate instances of these songs, and you probably also have a no-argument constructor that go along with that. Okay, right. So a song. So let's now perhaps do the modeling of a if typically your whatever you might be implementing, there usually is at least one one-to-many relationship between some whole and some parts. In this case, it might be that the playlist might be the whole, right? Maintaining references to the parts being the songs. So this might be a playlist, and the playlist might have references to the different parts of the playlist, which might be the songs. Again, if you are storing in a database, typically you'll need a representing the ID for that for whatever this record is in the database. If you're not storing in a database, then typically you won't need an ID. So for the playlist, you might have maybe the name of the playlist. And you might have also a collection or an array list of the songs. And you might need to import. And then you'll have the setters and getters for each one of these. So let's create real quick the setters and getters. And the constructors. Here's the all argument constructor and the no argument constructor. right, once you have a model, right, typically you need to be able to manipulate these objects. A best practice is to have a dedicated set of classes that deal with keeping track of all the data, right? Of where is it, whether it's being stored on a file or an XML file or JSON or database or whatever it is, right? Somebody has to keep track of where the data is in memory, right? So typically you'll have a dedicated set of classes that deal with this, right? So a very common pattern is to have some class that is dealing with accessing the data from somewhere and keeping track of it. Here we'll do a very simple implementation, and we'll encapsulate all data access through a data access objects. Okay, and typically you'll have one data access object per object model, right? So for instance, you might have one per song and one for playlists, right? And their responsibility is to be able to implement the various life cycles of these objects, like creating songs, retrieving all the songs, updating a song, removing a song, all the CRUD operations. Those are the only 4 real operations that any piece of object is useful for, right? So here you might have for song, you might have a song data access object, and it would be the host of everything that has to do with managing the life cycle of songs. Whether you just song data. Okay. So presumably here in the song DAO, you might have perhaps a collection of songs, of all the songs that are available. Well, actually it would be some kind of subset of all songs available. So this might be just a local storage. And then the various operations that you might want to do with this entity, with this song. Let's include that as well. Right. So for instance, you might have all the various operations on songs. You might have create a song, delete a song, find a song, update a song, find all the songs that are in a playlist and things like that. Right. So for instance, you might have here public. Void create song, and you might provide an API that folks can use to create a song with maybe the name and the lyrics. Right, and you would instantiate a new song here. So you might have a song. And then just, in this case, it would be just adding it to the collection of songs. If this were going to a database, then instead this would be some j2ee or connection that would store the song in a database. If you're storing it in a file, then it would be into a file. If you're doing an XML, then you would be storing in some XML data structure. Here, we're keeping it simple, so we're just storing it in just songs. So the various CRUD operations would be here. For instance, the other one that typically we might need is to retrieve all the songs, right? So we might have array list of song. You find all songs, and here you might return this dot songs. Again, if this were going to a file system, you would go out to the file, you would parse it, iterate over the XML, and extract each one of the song instances and return, instantiate song instances to go back to whoever is using this. Then you would have also perhaps delete a song, typically by some ID, right? So this might be int, returning whether it was successful or not. Delete a song. Probably will provide some ID identifier for a song, so it would be int ID. And we would look up that ID. So results was int result and return result. And here would be as simple as maybe perhaps iterating over all the songs, and when we find it, we remove it from the array list. So we might say for int I 0 I less than, let's get the count, is this dot songs dot size, and I is less than count I plus plus. And if we find the song, if ID, if this dot, so okay, let's retrieve the song. Song is equal to this dot songs dot get at I. If the song dot get ID is equal to ID, then we found the song, and we're just going to return the song. Oh, we're going to remove it. Okay, found it. So I'm just going to break. So we found the index. I. And once we have it, we just break out of here, and we just can remove it, right? We can just say this dot songs dot remove, right, and the index, and that's only if the index is greater than -1. Oops. Okay. If I want to update it, typically we would receive the an ID of the song that we want to update, and the new values for the song, the new name, the new lyrics, the new author, new date that it was published, whatnot. We might say update song and ID, followed by the new song data. And this would be fairly similar to what we did earlier. It would iterate until it finds a song. Right, when it finds a song, then instead of removing it, we are going to change it. We're going to say that song dot set name is the same as new song data dot get name, and song dot set lyrics is new song data dot get lyrics, and then we break, and then we just return result. Okay, that makes sense, right? Same thing you would do for the playlist, and you'd be able to create the relationship between the two. If you are using j2ee, the simplest way to render this on a page on a website, j2ee's implementation of dynamic web content is JSPs, Java Server Pages, and to do that, your projects, when you create your project, you should choose new dynamic web project. Dynamic web project allows you to tie it together to a Tomcat instance server and run this on Tomcat if you want to try it locally. We can take a look at that a little later. But once your project is a dynamic web project, you can create Java server pages that allow you to dynamically render content. In this case, it would be maybe the list of songs or the list of lyrics, the list of playlists. So here we can create a simple hello.jsp. And JSPs, anybody play with JSPs before? So JSPs allows you to use Java as a backend and display dynamic content here. If you've used PHP or Python or any other templating engine or ASPs, you'll feel right at home. You can treat it just as a plain old HTML. You can run this on a server. So all the content, that is going to be hosted as a dynamic content is going to be under the web content directory. And here's our hello.jsp. And we can tell it to run it on a server. Okay, so this is just only rendering plain old HTML. But if we want to, for instance, render songs, let's create just a couple here. Let's see. Let's create just a couple of songs here. Just create a couple here. 2, 3, 4. And let's put it in the constructor. Oh, I never created a constructor, okay. A new song, I think I need the ID. And I'll add it to the list of songs. So this dot songs dot add song 1, song 2, 3, and 4. So we have 4 songs there. So from within your JSP, let's create a song list. So let's create a new JSP and call it song-list.jsp. And that DAO that is now that we declared earlier, we can import it from the page, saying import so this would be, what do we call it? CS 4500 DAO. Okay, there we go. So we imported all the DAOs. If you need to import other things, such as you might need to import maybe some other classes, maybe the model, that would be under CS 45, no, CS 4500, no. DAO, did I put it under model? Okay, so you can do a comma-separated list of packages to load them separately. So here we might have here a song list, and we might have here a dynamic UL for listing all the songs. We'll need to load both. We'll need to load the DAO that handles all data access to those songs, so we can instantiate those. So song DAO is sDAO, new song DAO. Once we have the DAO, we can then retrieve the list of songs. So it would be an array list of songs. Songs equal sDAO dot find all songs. So that's going to retrieve the entire list of songs. Array list is another, it's like a collection, like an array that can grow and shrink in Java. So we can just load it here, java.utils.ArrayList. Maybe it's util? Okay, util, array list. Once we have the song, we can iterate over that. We can just say for int I 0 I less than the songs.size and I plus plus, and we'll get the song. Song is songs.get in the I. So that's Java, and so what JSP allows you to do is mix and match HTML and Java by using these escape characters, saying that I'm no longer coding in Java. I'm going back to HTML, where I can open up a line item and display some data, and then I can go back to Java to close that curly bracket there. And here what I like to be able to display is the names of those songs. So I have these variable that I want to display there. I can say display the value of song.getName. Okay, so we can run this on the server. With the list of songs listed there. Typically you would additionally add user interfaces to allow you to maybe edit a song or remove a song or either implement it on the same page or on a separate page. More commonly today, typically you have a specific page for different use cases. Or you can just put it all in one single page, just to make it simple. Okay? That makes sense? All right. Anybody interested in database access of this? Anything or no? Yes? No? Well, I have a couple more minutes. Let's connect this to a database. So to connect this to a database, we'll need to start the database. Shoot. Let's create here. All these tools are obviously they're all free. Let's here in experiments. Let's create a couple of tables, songs, and let's create an ID. And this will be a primary key, and it will automatically increment the index, so we don't have to specifically provide the index to the song. We'll have the name of the song, and we'll have the lyrics. Very short songs, only 45 characters. So we can store a couple of songs here. Apply, and it creates that song table, and we can insert a couple of songs there. Copy, clipboard, insert. Oh, Let's insert a couple of songs. I'm going to leave out the ID, meaning that since I declared it to be automatically incremented, right, it will select the ID for me. So I'm removing those fields, and instead I'm just providing the name of the songs. So boring songs, so song A, and lyrics A. And let's insert a whole bunch of these. B, C, just those three. Select and run this, and it creates those three songs just to verify that indeed they are there. We can select them, and indeed they are there. All right, so for this typically to work, we will need a library for Java to be able to connect to the database. That library is, since it's MySQL, each vendor has its own library. MySQL has its library to connect to. We'll need to add it to the class path. So we can add it as a jar file, and it should be somewhere here. User local, oh, there it is. So this is a jar file I downloaded from MySQL's website. So now that it's available, we can go and refactor the original song DAO. Oh, let me stop the server. We can refactor the song DAO so that instead of returning the local list of DAOs, to actually go out to the database to fetch all this. Okay, so here we can create an array list of empty songs. So songs, a new array list of songs. We'll need to connect to the database. To do that, we're going to load the entry point to the driver that we just added to the Java class path. So we can do a class dot for name, and I believe it's called. I think it's called com.mysql .jdbc maybe, .driver maybe. Let's see if it complains. All right, since that might not be in the class path, I'm going to surround it with a try catch. Once I have that, we can ask for a connection, a database connection, but we'll need to connect to the URL where the database server is running, and that's running at the local host at 27.0.0.1. So we can get a hold of a connection, database connection, from the driver manager. So this class for name instantiates the driver manager and makes it available in the path, and we can get a connection. We'll need to provide the URL of where the server is running, and the URL I believe is jdbc :mysql localhost. So it's running on my local machine, and then the database name. The database name we're using is experiments, so it'd be experiments. It'll also need a username and password, which I created already, CS5200 and CS5200. So there, we have a connection. We need to load the connection library, and where is it? There it is. And this might throw an exception, I believe. So add throws clause. There we go. SQL exception. Once we got a connection, we can actually create a statement, a SQL statement, to ask for what we want. And once we have a statement, we can execute a query. You say statements dot execute statement. Did I spell it right? Oh, statement. Okay. Execute query, and we might want retrieve all the songs. So select all the songs from the table called song, is it? That's going to return to us a result set of all the rows that from the songs table. And we can start iterating over all the rows. You can say while results.next. As there are more rows, I like to extract all those rows and retrieve their ID from the results as an integer. And the column name is ID. And I want to retrieve the name of the song from the column called name. And I want to retrieve the lyrics from the field also called lyrics. Once we have that, we can instantiate a song. Right? We can say song equals new song and provide all these values: one ID, name, and lyrics, and add it to the list of songs. So songs.add, and this is the song. Once we have the song, at the end, that's what we're going to return at the end. Return songs. Okay? All right. So let's see if this blew up. Let's go back to our song list. And let's try and running it again on the server. Oh, this coverage. Oh, I forgot to do something. There it is, song A, B, C, having been retrieved from the database. We should, something I forgot to do is that every time you open up a connection, you should clean up after yourself and close all the resources behind you. Typically, these databases will be shared amongst the team members. You might not be the only one using the database, and every time you ask for a connection, the database runs out of these connections eventually. So you need to close all these resources that you opened and close them behind you. If you're in a team and somebody asks what happened to the connections, somebody's not closing your connection, make sure it's not you. There we go. So we have that implementation. A trivial, 25 words or less on using JSP for dynamic access to a database. All right. I'm gonna leave it here.